Luminaries. I have a special guest. We've had her here before, and she's just like absolutely one of my most soul aligned business besties, Asha Frost. And she's going to be teaching us about bear medicine, Thunderbird medicine, and how we can just overcome comparison to get to our soul agreements in this beautiful episode today. Welcome to the Savvy Luminary podcast, Astrology for Entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Leslie Tagorda, creator of the Astrology method, business astrologer, brand designer, author, and Aquarius boss woman. I help visionary spiritual entrepreneurs and impact makers like you illuminate and amplify your unique star powers so you can be the luminary you were born to be. Everyone, luminaries, I am so excited to bring back Asha Frost. I just love this soul so much. And today, on February 16th, when this episode is released into the world, it is our bear moon. Welcome, Asha.
Thank you so much for having me again. This is one of my favorite podcasts to be on.
And you're one of my favorite guests. I wish you could come on with me all the time. It just make things so much easier to just like chit chat, like our all of our messages back and forth to each other. I'm like, oh, we need to talk about this and this and this.
Yes, exactly.
Well, you are here today because we have a couple of things that we're celebrating. We're celebrating Bear Moon, which I'm going to have you share. And we're celebrating your upcoming release of your book, You Are the Medicine, that is going to be available to the public on March 15th, but it's available for pre-sale now. Can you tell us about this book? And there's just like so many things to talk about. I don't even know where to start.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean this book started, I guess, as you know, from the Hay House Writers Workshop, and it was a dream, and I think it was a lifelong dream that was just waiting to be birthed into the world. And in my work for the last 2 decades, there's been so much animal spirit medicine and moon medicine that I just felt like I had to combine the two in whatever medicine I was going to put out in the world. And the title is You Are the Medicine. And the reason that's the title is because I was a homeopath for almost 15 years. And what I saw in thousands of people that I saw was that these little beautiful pellets were like catalysts, reminding people and helping them to remember that they have this vital force within, that they indeed have a healing power within, and that medicine is within them. And sometimes we just need a reminder. So this book is like little reminders of the medicine within, and I'm hoping that it's an activation for people who read it.
Oh, gosh, I love that so much. And, what I neglected to, I'm just assuming that everybody's been listening to my podcast forever since the beginning of times, because Asha, you've been a guest so many times, but I know that there's a lot of new listeners, and I forgot to actually introduce who you are and how we know each other. But I met you at the Hay House Diverse Wisdom Initiative, a workshop back in 2019. And I know I've told this story over and over again, but I can't stop telling the story because when I saw you in that dingy little conference room, remember how dingy that conference room was?
It was dingy.
And it was all of these aspiring authors of color that Hay House had brought together. And I saw your colorfulness, your brightness all across the room. And I was like, I need to speak with her. And I came your way and you told me that you are an Indigenous medicine woman. At the time, you were calling yourself Rainbow Medicine Woman. Is that right?
Yeah, my spirit name was Healing Rainbow Woman.
Beautiful. So can you tell, for those of us that don't actually know you, I'm having a hard time because I'm like, well, I know you, everybody knows you, but that might not be the case.
Well, yeah. So my Indigenous name was Healing Rainbow Woman, Nādoi Nāgoi of Kwe, and my ancestral lands are Nēshing Cape Croker, which is just I'm in Canada, and so it's by the Georgian Bay. So it's a big land surrounded by water is what that means. And my other ancestors are all across what is now known as Ontario. So I am Ojibwe or Anishinaabe, and I've had a healing practice for the last 2 decades as first a homeopath, and then I did medicine and started weaving in medicine work into my homeopathy practice. And that just deepened and deepened as I went on my own journey of healing myself, really, and learned from a lot of elders and teachers and guides over the years, and just delved really deep into how to sort of harness my own wisdom in that way. And then whatever came forward from my own healing work became wisdom that I wanted to share with the world. So my business went sort of more online. I had an online membership for over 2.5 years that I loved. It was called Sacred, and it just keeps evolving. I guess the medicine keeps evolving, and I'm trying to let it evolve and not stay too attached to how that's going to look.
Yeah. Well, you've recently gone through a transformation. Is that correct with your spirit name? Can you tell us a little bit more of that kind of chrysalis progress?
Yeah. So I was immersed in like a really deep healing program for a year, and it seemed to come about from that. In that time, I was wrestling with, my understanding of my spirit name, where rainbow, extends over two beings. It's like a bridge.
Mhm.
So I was sort of struggling a little bit with that nature or identity of me being this bridge being, of having to walk in both worlds, traditional and modern, sometimes even spiritual and physical, I guess, and not having many guides in that way who are doing the same thing as me. It's always felt like a lonely path. I've always felt like, why do I have to be the trailblazer? Why do I have to be the one that's doing these new things? And I knew that was part of my name. And I also knew that it wasn't the complete story. So I started having visions of Thunderbird, dreams of Thunderbird, just feelings of Thunderbird around me. And I wasn't really sure what that was about, but I was sitting with it. And all of this evolution was going where I was feeling a lot of death happening, like death of identity, death of being that bridge being, and just feeling like this was a lot of heaviness to hang on to on my shoulders, and just
Yeah.
responsibility to heal all of these ancestral patterns. I just felt like I want to have ease. I want to be well. I want to be healthy in my body. What's changing? So I asked a medicine person that I'm friends with to check in. So he's a pipe carrier and he does tent shaking ceremony. So he went in and he checked to see, because I said, I feel a new name coming. Can I ask you if that is true? So he received the name for me, and he says, this doesn't happen for everyone. Sometimes we have the same name for forever, and
Mhm.
other times we evolve into new names as we grow on our path. And for some reason, I had a new name, and the first name my grandfather gave me. So it's not like I want to give it up. It's still part of my essence and energy and vibration. But now it's we dad doing a nimkika, which is she who walks a path with the Thunderbirds.
Mm.
And the way I see this is that there are other Thunderbirds coming along, and some of them hold this angelic frequency. That was something new that came into my awareness. But that we're gathering them together and we're walking together, because that togetherness I think I've spent so much time feeling like I was alone. There was something about I'm walking a path with other Thunderbirds that felt like more supportive for me. So it sent chills down my spine, and it still does to think about that. But that's the sort of identity that I'm claiming and stepping into very slowly,
Mhm.
very carefully, and with respect. But it's still coming. It's still integrating. So that's the story about the name.
Oh my goodness, that is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, because I was curious. I've seen you talk about it, and I've seen things change a little bit in kind of like your website and your branding and how you present yourself. And that rainbow medicine woman, like how you talked about, like that's still in your soul essence. And of course, I know you from an astrological perspective. I'm always kind of connecting those dots. And when you talk about the rainbow with your Libra rising, of course, your beautiful Libra rising, that bridge that Libra is always connecting and creating that bridge. And now you're stepping into this more like powerful, but you're not alone. And with your North Node in the first house in Libra, it's like, how do you become this bridge creating sense of self? I don't think that came out correctly just yet, but I think you get the essence. But
Mhm.
as I was reading, so Asha has this beautiful book, You Are the Medicine, and she shares the 13 moons of her Indigenous teachings. And I have, just the honor to actually hold a physical copy, an advanced copy in my hands. And I'm a bookmarker. Like I have to have my own books because like they're all highlighted and doggy-eared. Like I just can't help myself. I'm sorry, books, but that's just the way that I experience you. And each of these moons that you share, you have a message of the spirit animal, you have a spirit journey or a medicine journey that you take people on. You also give a story of kind of how that moon name came to being. And it's so comprehensive and it's so beautiful. But that Thunderbird, I haven't made it all the way through. I'm like up to like flower moon right now because I've just been like savoring in every word. But Thunderbird moon, really, really, really spoke to me. Could you talk a little bit about that moon?
So that moon really is about, it's about coming back to our creation story. And really, to me, like that creation story is remembering who we are when we say that. It's like I have this image of creator or the universe or God or whoever you call them being in front of you and saying like, there's your divine spark. This is who you are. This is who you are going to come down onto the planet to be. And this is how you're going to shine your medicine. And I believe we're all walking home to that remembering through either diving deep into our healing work or some of the struggles we go through maybe cracks us open to that remembering. So that Thunderbird essence and chapter is really about that, like coming home to our truest nature. And we had a conversation, and it's in the book about this because I have struggled I've shamed my truest nature so many times. I think that is what collectively or ancestrally patriarchal energies, have shamed our truest nature. And as a sensitive, empathic being who is, as you brought so beautifully forward, a peaceful warrior, I think that there was a time where I was feeling like I wasn't enough and my voice needs to be a certain way. It's too quiet. It's too gentle. It's too, all the not enoughness always arose for me until I claimed my truest nature, because I can't be anybody who I'm not, and neither can you. And we can try to fit into others people's expectations and ideas of who we are, but we're going to struggle if we try to like sandwich or pretzel ourselves into that, right? It's not going to work. So this is a reminder to come home to your truest nature, which I think you just embody that, or you help people to see that, because it really was birthed from the stars.
Yeah, I think that's why that Thunderbird, I think it's part of the Spirit Moon chapter, why that Thunderbird medicine was so like called to me so much. And I think that's also, and it's also the connection of how I approach astrology. It's like, how do we find what you call your soul agreement or that true essence of our identity? And I see that identity like mapped out, like literally on somebody's natal chart. And it's so beautiful because one of the quotes that I kind of highlighted, when we're coming from this place of when we're not feeling like enough, like you said, like my voice is not strong enough or enough, that we come to this place of comparison. We're comparing ourselves to some other person or some societal construct that we are comparing and saying, well, we're not like that, so we're not enough. Or we see people that are doing things that we want to do, and then we start to get jealous of them or try to copy them in some way. And so this kind of idea of comparison and jealousy and copying is something that is a lifelong signature for me, that I catch myself always just coming into, and how to teach people to find that road to themselves. But you said it so beautifully and eloquently, because you are a poet and a genius like this. And you said, I cannot walk in the exact same way, but I can call similar blessings to me. In terms of like Thunderbird medicine and how do we overcome this idea of comparison and jealousy, it's like, well, when I get that pang of jealousy or comparison, I can use this as a reminder. It's like, well, what is it about that pang of jealousy that I find in somebody else's success? Like, what is that blessing of success that is for them that I so want for myself in my own way?
Yes, I love that because we cannot copy it. Like that's not our true nature. It's not the way the
Yeah.
medicine's meant to be birthed through us, right? We have that unique signature on the world, our unique thumbprint on the world. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. But and I also want to presence that I think we all experience that. Some of us more than others. I think that jealousy thread or that envy. And I want to say, I think if you're out there doing the work, actually showing up in your medicine, it's going to be big for you because it's vulnerable and it's scary and it can be terrifying to actually put your soul on the line. It's easier not to be jealous if you're kind of just not really putting yourself out there, you know? So I
Yeah.
think that it's also really important for like all your listeners to know that I think it's such a natural and normal thing to feel comparison because that's how we position ourselves in the world, and we need to be gentle and not blame ourselves for that.
I just love that permission to be gentle with ourselves, especially like when, for so many of my listeners, we are business owners, entrepreneurs, visionaries, and change makers. And we really all want to make an impact and live our purpose in our lives. And it's so hard in the age of social media where we're seeing everybody's highlights, but how so important it is to find what you call our soul agreements, our soul essence, what I call our natal gifts through our astrology, and how we present that, how we heal that, and how we offer it in our work.
I love it.
Yeah. One of the things that you also talk about, so like if we're thinking about Thunderbird and that comparison and jealousy and copying, and how do we find our own sense of identity and belonging, I feel like this has been such a common thread lately that I hear myself talking about, but also how you give that softness, you give that like take that blame off of yourself. And throughout your book, a phrase that keeps on coming through: it's not your fault. Can you tell
Yeah.
us more about that?
I think that's a really important thing. And it's actually something that came really clear doing some nervous system work, I think, actually with Dr. Valerie Rain. She says that a lot too about the systems. And for her, it's the patriarchal systems. But what really rang clear to me in doing that work was it's colonial systems for me. It's not the patriarchy, it's the colonization or colonial stuff
Yeah.
that has really impacted me. And we all are impacted by colonization and colonial systems, even no matter what our background is, they impact us. So I think that we shame ourselves. And yet we're not looking at the systems at play. So it's really important. And it's not that we can't take responsibility to do some healing work around it because
Yeah.
it's not a bypassing thing where you're like, oh, not my fault. I'm just going to ignore it. It's like,
Or blame somebody
right. Or
else,
blame
right?
somebody else. You're not going to put it, you're just like, right, not my fault, but what can I do with this? How can I respond to this now? Oh, I'm going to do some personal work. I'm going to do some meditation or journeying. I'm going to do some clearing on this because if everyone was to do that, I think we would break free from the system's hold on us. And also we're breaking free for that for the generations to come. So they're not going to hold those systems or be impacted by them so deeply. That's something that's really big for me. It's like, yeah, not feeling the weight of it, like you have to carry it around for the rest of your life, but also knowing, oh wow, it's here because it's here for a reason. I can do something about this. I can be mindful and conscious about this, and I can help the planet to evolve.
Oh, this is so beautiful because, yeah, it's not your fault, yet it is your responsibility to do that deep healing. And especially as entrepreneurs and change makers, like we have to do our own inner healing. We can't bypass, we can't just like focus on all the beautiful things, which I want to come back to, but I just wanted to share that it's not your fault. I feel like over the last 2 days and over the last 2 years, really, as we're all coming to this kind of social justice reckoning, There's people who are like, they don't want to focus. They don't want to look at where the systems are broken or even acknowledge that there are certain systems broken. But for me, and, thanks to you and your book, you've really given me some vocabulary and some definitions that I just didn't have the language for. So I couldn't even recognize all the places that I just blamed myself, like, oh, I self sabotage, or I'm not good enough, or I'll never be good enough. But you actually put like real terms that like just define what that experience was for me. And just by being able to define that experience, I was finally able to see just kind of the systems of oppression that I've lived in, that, yeah, those things might not necessarily have been those challenges that I faced as a younger person weren't maybe my fault, yet now how I need to take responsibility to rise above it and to make sure that this doesn't happen for others again.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that it spoke to you in that way. Because I think that's what it takes. It's just a constant understanding, right? And just seeing through a different lens. And then if we're not, because if we shame and blame ourselves, we're going to get stuck there. There's just
Mhm.
nowhere to go if we're shaming and blaming ourselves. We're just going to shut right down in trauma. So that gentle, like unweaving of that, I think I love that that's happening for you. That's my intention.
Yeah. The idea of that, the colonialism and how does that impact everybody that lives in the Western world? It's like if you're indigenous, like things were taken from you, or if you're a settler, the harm that you may be doing, even if you weren't a settler by choice. I know that we've shared a lot of these conversations because I grew up in Hawaii, and Hawaii has its own like a whole like lineage of colonialism, and how the colonists brought over a lot of the Asian diaspora to come to Hawaii to work on the plantations where they weren't offering those kinds of jobs to the native Hawaiians. And to me, some of the effects of colonialism come from this idea of division, right? Where you divide pieces of land, or you divide different like societies and races to keep them separate, because the more you divide things, the easier it is to manage and to control. When to me, the indigenous teachings, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I've noticed this in Hawaiian society, it's like where we're coming together is where we create abundance. And so thinking about in our business lives and how we are still individually impacted by colonialism is like, how do we keep dividing things up and creating these perceptions of scarcity, whether we're doing this in our marketing or in our sales, like we just have I only have like 10 more spots, and like, yes, we're creating some urgency, but there are some people that really, really, really manipulate that. And to me, that's just kind of a construct of more colonialism.
Yeah, that's why we're talking so much about decolonizing our business, because all of those things to everybody are harmful. Like
Mhm.
we don't think that manipulation is harmful, but it is. It's like colonial trauma that's being reactivated in the folks that you're sharing that with. And then they know that trauma well, so they're going to respond to it. So it's a bit of trauma bonding, because it's like, oh, right, I know what this colonial essence is an energy. Well, I better jump on that. So the more that we can kind of see through it and be like, oh, and not shame it or blame it and say that's bad, this is good. It's just, this is what's happening here. Okay, am I going to participate in this energy because that's going to reactivate my own wounds? Or do I know that I have some work here to do and I'm seeing that for what it is?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to move into something that's a little bit more healed for me, which I think is an important question to ask.
Mm, so beautiful. So, today that this episode is dropping is on the bare moon, and you talk all about the bare moon in your book, You Are the Medicine. Might you want to offer a little bit of medicine and share what medicine is from your tradition and the medicine of today's full moon?
Oh, yes. So, Bear, as you'll see in my book, is just one of my most treasured allies and friends and protectors. And from my perspective, and everybody would have a different perspective, I guess, on this, but medicine is something that kind of cracks us open or helps us to remember who we are. And that could be pharmaceutical medicine as well. Like that could help us and that could serve us, but that's not the way that I use the term. It's more something that's going to help, almost like I see that homeopathic remedy, help us to remember and bring us back to maybe our wholeness or even our creation story. So that's what I feel medicine is. And that can come in the form in my book. It's moons, it's animal essences, it's your own medicine, because I think that we all carry a particular presence and power that we come into in this lifetime. So the bare moon is about rest and hibernation and unweaving from those colonial systems or those patriarchal systems that tell us your value is based on productivity. Your value is based on how much you do and how much you make and all of those things. And Bear just comes in and says, we need the cycle of rest. Rest is the void. Rest is when integration happens. Rest is so needed, and our society does not nurture rest. So Bear comes in because in the northern hemisphere, where these moons are based out of, in where I live right now, this is really, it's bear season. Like it's still really cold here. We are really into hibernation season here. And it's just a gift from the earth that says it's safe to rest. It's safe to slow down, right? And if we don't go through that season, then we are going to burn out.
Mm.
So during this moon, we release some of that colonial understanding, I think, from our bones, because that's where it exists and that's where it lives. So, yeah, I mean, one way that you can invite bear, and it's a beautiful way that I love to invite people, is there's a traditional medicine called bear grease that we use for skin conditions and even arthritis. It's a beautiful, it kind of looks like a honey colored medicine.
Mhm.
And you can sort of imagine that energetically, there's this beautiful bear grease that's coming in, and you can even just activate it in your hands and place it on your body where you need that soothing and that reminder that, is there any place inside of you that feels like you're pushing too hard? Or are there any places inside of you that feel like you're not enough because you're not producing enough?
Mm.
Are there places that resist rest, that just push through? For myself, it's like I was diagnosed with lupus when I was 17, and this has been a huge lesson. Like my body speaks loudly,
Oh yeah.
and it's not until I'm flat on my back and I can't move that I listen. So I'm trying to shorten that duration of time so my body doesn't have to speak so loudly. So I love that essence of imagining bear grease, and you have that medicine or remedy that you're just like moving through your blood and your bones, and it's just softening things and it's just nourishing things, because we need to be tended to as well, and that's so important. So during this bear moon, that's the medicine that I want to gift, is that bear grease. And how much does your body need it? I feel like a lot of us after the pandemic need a ton of it, because I also believe we've been in a bit of a frozen bear state. Like
Mm.
we've been forced into that hibernation season, but it's not a natural hibernation. It's just like slow down, speed up, slow down, speed up. And
Yeah.
I think that that's dysregulated our nervous systems a little bit. So bear medicine is needed more than ever.
Oh, that is so beautiful. All these images kind of just like flew by us. You were like, let's talk about this and this and this. And they have now gone. So that just means that, oh, both of us are human design projectors. We have also in astrology so much air. And I don't know about you, but on just like a day-to-day basis, I need bear medicine. Like I have a few hours a day that I'm like really productive, and then I need to take a nap. And it's like, how can we give ourselves permission to rest in this really nourishing bear medicine way in our work lives, so that we're not always like pushing and like driving our bodies to chronic illness inflammations?
Oh, I love that. And somebody said to me last week, imagine we all just had recess still. Like, remember how we loved recess as
Yeah.
children? Imagine we just gave ourselves permission to have, we had 3 recesses a day when I was little. Like, why did we stop that? Right? And recess could be a nap. That would be
Nap
amazing.
time.
I think it's so great. Like, why do we stop that? If we need it as children, we need it even more now.
Oh my goodness. Well, let's see. There was one last thing. So we have some bear medicine, and I'm curious. There probably are people listening who are super curious about Indigenous teachings and how to harness Indigenous medicine and tradition with respect. And I know you have some keys for us and also some keys to how do we tap into maybe our own lost Indigenous traditions.
Hmm. I think that's such a beautiful question to ask ourselves because I think if you're drawn to these ways, I just believe that somebody in your lineage must have practiced something that was earth based or connected to the earth
Mhm.
because otherwise the desire I don't think would be as lit up for you. So, and I know it's hard. People say, I don't know anything about my family, or they don't share anything, or they didn't like their parents and grandparents, so they just have a broken relationship. That's where I think like doing guided journeys like her that are in my book, and the audible version will be probably easier to listen to those,
Mm.
but they awaken things, maybe rememberings that are in our DNA and our blood, our dream time, all the things that colonial energy has said was wrong or was not allowed, everything that was trying to be stripped from Indigenous people.
Mhm.
Dream time, visions, journeying, quiet, even that bear hibernation, that's where you're going to get your knowings. So if you don't have direct access to your lineage, there are some clues there, I think, at times, and you can ask for your ancestors to come in, ask them to inform you, ask for, I have this in my book that a medicine woman once told me that teachings were taught to me during dream time. And that's how I have a knowing now of some things that nobody ever taught me in my real lifetime. So I think there's different ways of access, which I just think be open to different ways of access. And then with regards to being respectful, I think everybody would speak differently about that. But in my experience, the most harmful thing is seeing people take things and use it for their own, I don't know, to increase their visibility or sell more programs or things like that without honoring the essence of what they're using or the people who that came from. And I think knowing the history is so important. In Canada, our ceremonies were banned. We were banned from using these things. And so there can be trauma arise when we see somebody who's not Indigenous using it with ease when that was banned for us not that long ago by the Indian Act. So know the history, because if you knew the history, you wouldn't be doing that. And once you know the history and the truth, because sometimes we do things because we mess up and we make mistakes, and there's no shame in that. But once you know, how can you do differently? And how can you know the history of Indigenous people on your land right now? Because that's really important, because those things get hidden, those things get bypassed, and people don't want to see the truth. So I'd say, yeah, those are some of the tips that I have.
Mm. To hone into that idea of number one, yes, honoring the land. If you don't already know the indigenous spirits that lived on the land on which you now occupy and thrive with your homes and your families and your businesses, please discover that there's a lot of online tools that will share with you the indigenous peoples and spirits that have cared for that land for so long. And the second thing is that I invite you, just like Asha does in her book, is to really look at the underbelly, that to not run away from the shadows in your life, in your family, in your lineage, in the histories of the land that you live on, because there is a certain you so beautifully say, and we and other spiritual teachings say this, is that there is no light without darkness. And the more that we run away from the shadow, the more the dis-ease of life catches up to us and manifests in so many different ways. And so if you love this medicine, and the beauty of Ash's teaching to honor fully is to understand the history and the pain that also comes with it. And that is like the whole experience: tears of joy, tears of sadness, tears of just gratitude for experiencing the whole spectrum.
Yes, you said that so beautifully. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that.
Your book has just touched me in so many ways, Asha. Just like I'm literally just brought to tears every time I just read any passage. Could you tell us more about how people can get your book and connect with you? Because you just have you offer so much, you give so much.
Thank you. So there's a free, beautiful gift that you can receive that actually Leslie and Jeffrey helped me with, and I'm so grateful for it. So you can receive that at youarethemedicinebook.com, and that has you just have to type in the number of where you ordered the book, and again, it's available at most places, and even small
Yeah.
bookstores I'm hearing. So that's a really beautiful thing too. And then you just type in your little number, and you can receive. It's a guide that goes along, a ceremony guide that goes along with all the moons. So you can participate in the moons as they move through the year and do the ceremonies that go along with that. So that's a beautiful offering, I think. And then I would love to see you on Instagram. That's the biggest place. It's Asha.Frost. And I would love to see you on there because that's where I show up the most.
Oh, it's so beautiful. I love her Instagram account. And she shares so many things, not just her work, but just for everything that she is, her peaceful warrior activist for so many Indigenous rights and policies. And just you stand up for so many things and share so many beautiful things that you're just beautiful to see. So head on over to youarethemedicinebook.com and you can see all of the different places to pre-order her book. And as a book, her book is for sale officially, or you get the books on on March 15th. But these pre-orders are just so huge for any author. It just kind of elevates the algorithm that be that share the book more. So pre-orders are really, really important. You can find all the different links to order her book from there. And if you have access to a small bookshop or an independent bookshop, please purchase your books and pre-order from there. Of course, let them know that they need to carry Asha's just beautiful work. This work needs to be out into the world. If you're shopping online, yes, you can choose those online big box retailers, but there are some other online spaces, like at least in the United States, Powell's Books or bookshop.org that are just beautiful places to also order your books online.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you, Asha. Such a joy. All right, luminaries, happy, beautiful full moon. Full moon in Leo, 27 degrees. And then, of course, in the Ojibwe tradition, it is the beautiful bare moon. So rest up, luminaries. We'll talk to you soon. If you love this podcast, please consider doing me a favor and heading over to Apple iTunes and leaving me a rating and review. Your rating and review helps this humble podcast get seen and found by more listeners like you. Please share the love.